Hey guys, welcome back to a new video, and in this video I'm going to show you how you can use GraphQL in your Kotlin multi-platform projects. What is GraphQL? GraphQL is a query language using which you can communicate with your backend. GraphQL has only one endpoint, and using the same endpoint you can perform the get operation, which is equivalent to query in GraphQL. We have mutation, we have subscription. All of this operation you can perform using only one endpoint. And when you want to get information from your backend, you can actually write your own response structure on the front end, and corresponding to that your backend will respond or send you the same information that you have been mentioned in your query. This will give you more flexibility if you compare this thing with REST API. REST API has fixed response structure, but in GraphQL it is not the case. It's you who can dictate what response you want from your backend. Enough talking, let's get started with our video and see how we can do this thing in our Kotlin multi-platform project. Let's get started. So first go to my GitHub repository, download the project and open up into your Android Studio. In this project, I have added all the dependencies that we will use throughout this video. So open up your shared module build.gradle.kts. I'm gonna show you all the dependencies that I'm be using in here. So on the plugin section, I have added Apollo plugin. Well, Apollo is a client that we will use to communicate with our GraphQL endpoint. Next, we have KSP plugin. Lastly, we have observable native coroutine. Well, this plugin is actually used to expose state flows in both platforms very easily. Scroll down, we have Android dependency for Coin dependency injection framework. In the common main, we have dependency for CoinDI, some lifecycle dependency, KMP observable view model. This dependency is actually used to expose our view model in a form of observable object in iOS. Then we have Apollo dependency, some caching dependencies to that we will use in this video. In our Android app Gradle file, I have added two dependency for coin dependency injection framework. Okay, so that's all for the dependency setup. Now it's time to set up Apollo client in Kotlin multi-platform project. So for that, go to your build.gradle.kts file of your shared module, and in this I'm gonna add Apollo closure. And in this Apollo closure, we have a function naming service, and just give the service name. I'm using your name service. You can give the name whatever you want. We have a little warning in here, and it says add introspection block. So accept the suggestion. We have introspection block that has three different information. First, the endpoint URL. Next, we have headers. If you are having any headers in your GraphQL, you can add that header in here. But for our case, we don't have any, so remove it. And lastly, the location of your schema within your Kotlin multi-platform project. So we have to download this schema using this URL. Okay, but before that, let me set up my package name. So as you can see, the package name is coming from shared source common main dev Himanshu GraphQL country app. So use here dev Himanshu GraphQL country app. So this is my package name, and now it's time to show you the endpoint that we will consume in this video. So this is the endpoint, countries.trevorblades.com, and I will give you this URL at the bottom of the description box. We have a little playground in here. If you want to play with the queries, you can play with that too. When you click on this play icon, it will eventually get the information from the backend, as you can see in here. Now let's say I don't want to include this body of language in my response structure, and click on this play icon. As you can see, now we are not receiving the information regarding the country languages. So this is a flexibility that GraphQL query will provide you. Well, GraphQL contains three different operations: query operation, mutation operation, and subscription operation. Query operation is mainly used when you want to get information from your backend, and also you can dictate, you can manufacture your response structure by yourself on your front end. Next, we have mutation. If you want to perform any kind of mutation on your backend, you should use GraphQL mutation operation. Lastly, we have subscription. So subscription is mainly used when you want to get real-time data with the help of your GraphQL endpoint. Mostly it is used when you want to build let's say stock application, let's say chat application. In that kind of application, we have to use real-time data. So yes, you can use subscription for those kind of applications. Well, in our video, we'll only explore the query, how we can consume this query in our Kotlin multi-platform projects. So just copy this URL, drag this screen to my second one, and paste your GraphQL endpoint in here. Next we have to decide the location, and in this location all of the schema will be downloaded by our introspection. So right now it is pointing towards source main GraphQL schema dot GraphQLs. I'm gonna change this main to common main. Now it is pointing toward source common main, and in this it will create a new directory naming GraphQL, and within this we have our schema.graphqls. Sync your project, open up your tasks by clicking on this icon. We have task Android Apollo, and in this Apollo the third task, download service Apollo schema from introspection. Double click on it. It will download the schema information. GraphQL schema.graphqls. Well, in GraphQL we have only one endpoint, and this endpoint have a lot of operations. It may have 10 queries, it may have 20 mutation, it may have 30 subscription within this same one single endpoint. So here you can see in this schema it contains all of the information regarding the types that you are using, regarding the queries, regarding the mutation and the subscription. So scroll up at the top, we have continent type, so it represents a type. Next we have input. Input will eventually used as an input to some query or some mutation or some subscription. We have country type. Scroll down, here you can see we have query. So type query that contains continent. If you want to fetch specific continent using the code ID, you can use this continent query. Next we have continents query, and in this you can see input is continent filter input, and return type of this thing is list of continents. Next we have countries, and input is country filter input. If you want to pass any kind of filter, you can do that thing very easily. We have an object for regarding that, country filter input. Next we have country, language, languages. Now let's see how we can use this countries query. So for that, in the GraphQL directory, I'm going to create a new GraphQL file, and the file name is get countries. I want to perform a query, so simply use your query keyword, and the name of this query is get countries. I want to use my countries query that we have been seen in my schema.graphqls, as you can see in here. Okay, so this country surely have name. Execute it. Now we are receiving the name. Let's say I want to use this query. So copy this piece of code and paste in here and execute it. Now you can see the response structure is same. If you compare this response with this, it is equivalent. Just let me hit this. Okay, so now you can see response structure is pretty much same. So this is a plus point of using GraphQL query. You can dictate your response structure by yourself in your front end. Now let's see how we can use this get countries in our repository, so that we can use this repository in our view model and expose this information to both platform. So for that I'm going to create a package, and the package name is repository. In this repository I'm going to create a file, and the file name is countries repository. Well, if you want to fetch information from your GraphQL endpoint, you will have to create a Apollo client. So private val Apollo client, we have Apollo client naming object, use here builder, set up your server URL in it. Also I want to use here caching, so to accommodate caching we'll use here normalized cache, and lastly build it. And the requirement of this normalized cache is normalized cache factory. So let's create a variable in here called cache, and you can create memory cache factory. In this you have to pass the size that you want to use as a cache. So I'm using 10 MB, so 10 into 1024 into 1024, and simply pass your cache in here. Now I'm going to create a function naming get countries, and return type of this thing is result. Get countries query dot data. So I'm using a try catch because some network request is going on. It might throw an exception in future. So if we receive any kind of exception, we're gonna use result failure and pass my exception. Otherwise, I'm gonna use my Apollo client, and in this Apollo client we have a query. You can simply pass your query, get country query, and execute it. So it will give you the result. Result dot success, use your result dot data and return it. Just use return keyword in front of your try. Alright, so we have a problem and the problem is return type. So yes, use here optional or nullable. So yeah, we are pretty much done with our repository. Now our repository contain one function naming get countries. This is actually used get countries GraphQL query, this one. Okay, so now it's time to create a package for view model, and in this view model I'm gonna create a class and the class name is countries view model. Extend this view model with view model. Make sure this view model is coming from observable view model. Alright, so in its init block I'm gonna use view model scope, launch a new coroutine and use our repository. So in order to use repository, I'm gonna use here coin component private wall repository countries repository, and I'm gonna use here inject, import it. Okay, so now we do have our repository. So at the end I'm gonna create a data class naming UI state that has our UI state. So first we have loading, type is boolean, initial value is false. Next we are having error, type of this thing is string, initial value is empty, and lastly the data. So in this data we have get country query dot data, initial value is null. Now here I'm gonna create UI state mutable state flow and initial value is UI state. So because this mutable state flow is also coming from our library that we have added in our build.gradle.kts. So let me show you the dependency, this one. Due to that reason, first we have to pass view model scope in it. And now it's time to build state flow so that it is exposable on both platforms. Now I'm going to create a suspend function naming get countries, and in this I'm going to use my repository. So use here a result naming variable, use your repository dot get countries function. So first I'm going to update my UI state so that we will show a loader. So UI state value UI state and is loading is true. Now if our result is success, then we'll use our UI state and update its value with data. So a result dot get or null, else we'll use our UI state and update our UI state with some error. Use your result exception or null that has message in it and stringify it. Okay, sometime it will be null, so use here question mark. Okay, so this function is actually used to update our UI state. Now I want to expose this UI state in both platforms. So to do that easily, we'll use here native coroutine state. And in this viewModelScope.launch block, I'm gonna call my get countries. So that's it for our view model. Now it's time to set up our coin dependency injection framework for both platforms. So first thing first, in this I'm going to create a package naming dependency injection, and we have a module in it, and I'm going to call this repository module. We have a variable naming shared module, and I'm going to create a module. We have a factory that contains our repository. Now we have to provide our view model. So in order to provide view model in this TI, I'm going to create one more file, and the file name is view model module. It's a file that contains an expect variable view model module, and the return type of this thing is module. Add missing actual declaration for Android main and iOS main. So right now we are in iOS main. So for that, First I'm gonna create a module closer in it, and in this module closer I'm using single and create an instance of our view model, which is countries view model, and just below to it I'm having an object and call this shared view model module. It uses coin component. We have a function get countries view model, which will eventually return me countries view model. So I'm using here get, and that's it. By using shared view model module, we will inject countries view model in our iOS platform. So we are done with this implementation for iOS. Now it's time to do the same thing for Android. So for Android, we have module closer, and in this we're gonna create an instance of our countries view model. Okay, so if you are using view model off, you should use here 2 colons and remove this small brackets. Okay, so we have given successfully implementation for our Android view model module. Now it's time to set up coin dependency injection framework for Android. So open up your Android main, and in this I'm gonna create a base application class. So base application, extend this thing with application, use on create start coin function and attach all of your modules. So first we have our repository module. I think name of that thing is shared module, and lastly the view model module. Register your base application into your Android app manifest. So this is your manifest. Register your base application and also take permission of internet. Alright, so we are done with the Android application setup. Now we have to do the same thing for iOS. So for iOS, go to the iOS main, and in this I'm gonna create a file, and the file name is setupcoin. In this we have a function, and the function name is initcoin. Use start coin function and simply attach your module. So we have shared module and view model module. So first we're gonna wrap up all the things for Android, and after that we will continue with iOS. So let's jump in our Android app main activity, and in this main activity, first thing first, I'm gonna attach safe content padding. Now it's time to build our view model. Use coin view model and mention the type, which is countries view model. We have UI state view model dot UI state and collect in a form of state. Now we'll check our UI state is loading or not. If it is loading, I'm using here a box having modifier fill max size, and its content alignment is on the center, and in this we have a circular progress indicator. If our UI state error is not empty, create a box having modifier fill max size and its content alignment is on the center. Simply show a text which will show the error message. So UI state error. If it is not the case, then we are actually receiving the data. So UI state data. Use here let, and in this we actually receive our data, and I'm gonna create a lazy column, and in this lazy column we have a modifier fill max size. Use here items and make sure the item that has parameter list of type T. Simply pass your data dot countries. Now we are receiving one by one all the countries. Create a column, and in this column I'm gonna show the country name. So use here text it dot name. Next we have to pass our style, which is coming from material theme typography, and I'm using here body large. Make a copy of it and do some changes regarding the font size. So font size is 24 sp. Import this sp. Lastly the font weight. So I'm using here font weight semi bold. We have spacer just below to it. Height of this spacer is 4 dp. Again we have a text it dot languages, and in this languages we are having name. So I want to join all of the language name in a form of string that is separated by comma. So I'm using here join to string, use the it dot name. Next we have to pass the style. So style is coming from material, theme, typography, and this time I'm gonna use here body medium and make a copy of it. Font size, this time I'm using here 16 sp, and the font weight is normal. So font weight normal, and at the end I'm using a horizontal divider. Alright, so that's it. Now I'm going to execute this application in my emulator. Alright, so I think I forgot to add the server URL in my Apollo client, so let's do that. Go to your build.gradle.kts of your shared module and simply copy this server URL, come back to your repository and simply paste your endpoint in here and execute it. As you can see, this time we are receiving all of the information regarding the country, and also I want to change in my query. So go to your get countries name, and also I want emojis. Execute your application one more time so that this emoji will embed in your query data. Now use this emoji in your main activity. Go to your main activity, and here in this lazy column text name I'm gonna add a space, and after that I'm gonna add that emoji. So it dot emoji, and also I want padding. So for that I'm using here modifier, and padding horizontally I want 12 dp and vertically 4 dp. Re-execute your application. Okay, so this time you can see we are receiving that emoji too. Okay, so we are pretty much done with Android application. Now it's time to begin with iOS app. So for iOS, first we have to install dependencies. So for that, open up your iOS app, go to pod file and simply paste these pods. Now install these pods. Open your terminal and make sure you are pointing towards your iOS app. So if you don't know how to do this, let me just show you. So use here cd and enter your location, which is iOS application, and simply press enter. So now you are pointing towards your iOS app directory, and use here pod install. Just click enter. It will install all of the pods that you have been mentioned over here. Now open your project into your Xcode. So this is my Xcode. So first thing first, we have to use our view model in a form of state view model. So to do that, we'll use here library. As you can see, we are using KMP native coroutine combine KMP observable view model Swift UI. So what it will do, it will simply convert your view model which is present in your shared module into observable object that we can use very easily in iOS application. So let's see how we can do that thing. So for that, let's create a group, and group is equivalent to package in iOS, and I'm gonna call this view model, and in this view model I'm gonna create a Swift file, and this Swift file name is KMP observable view model. And in this, first thing first, I want to import my shared module, and next I want to import our KMP observable view model core. Now I am going to create an extension over KMP observable view model underscore core view model. Use here view model, and that's it. This is the initial setup that you have to do in order to use that state view model in your content view or iOS application. Now jump into your content view, and in this content view we're gonna design our user interface using Swift UI. In this I'm gonna use state view model variable. We have our view model and initialize this thing with our shared. Let me import my shared view model module. Let me see what was the name of that object that we have created in our iOS main. open up your di view model module. Okay, shared view model module, this is fine. So shared view model module dot shared get countries view model, so this will return you countries view model. So we have a issue in our state view model property. So to remove that issue, we're gonna import KMP observable view model Swift UI, and as you can see now we don't have any kind of problem. Okay, so this is a place where I'm gonna put all of my Swift UI code. So we'll have a z stack is equivalent to box in composable, and in this we'll check our view model UI state dot is loading. If it is true, then we're gonna create a z stack, and in this z stack we're gonna show a progress view, and I'm gonna use here frame, and the max width of frame is infinity and max height is also infinity. Next we check our view model UI state error. If it is not empty, use here negation. If it is not empty, again I'm gonna use here z stack, and in this z stack we'll use text and simply use your view model UI state and error, simply print it. Lastly, I'm gonna use here frame with max width infinity and max height is also infinity. So we are done with the two states. Now it's time to use the success state. So for that I'm using here optional unbinding. So if let data which is coming from view model UI state data, if it is not null, that means this data will hold the actual value, and we're gonna use here list. So use here list. In this list we have for each loop, and in this for each loop I'm gonna use my data countries. Next we have to mention the ID, so I'm using the self, and one by one it will give me the item in this lambda. So let me just shrink this thing up. Okay, now in this I'm gonna use vstack, and in this vstack we have a text, and in this text we're gonna show the name, and after that I'm gonna add a space, and just after that I'm gonna attach the emoji. Okay, I want to change its size, so system size is 24 and its weight is semi bold. Next we have one more text, and this text is actually used to show us the languages. Okay, so we have a problem, and the problem is we can't use here plus. Now in the next text I'm using my item dot languages and use here map in order to perform transformation. I'm gonna take my item and convert this thing into a form of list of string, and lastly I'm using here joined, and my separator is comma. So what it will do, it will do the same thing that we were doing for our Android app using join to string, but here join to string is not available. So we'll take our languages and convert these languages in a form of a list of names, and after that we'll use a joint and join all of our list item with a separator comma. Now I'm using here font, system size is 16 and its weight is, we have a lot of options in here, so this time I'm gonna use, let's say, medium, and at the end I'm gonna add some padding. So from top I want 8 dp, and this text is also having padding, from top having 8 dp. Alright, so I'm using here frame, and in this frame we have maximum width of infinity and its alignment is on the leading. Alright, so we are pretty much done with our content view, and now I'm going to execute this application too. Okay, so our application is running. Alright, so it is giving me an error, and the error is because I haven't set up coin dependency injection framework for iOS app. So to do that, go to your iOS app.swift, and here in this init, I'm gonna use my setup coin kt dot do init coin, and now I'm gonna re-execute my application. Okay, so this is not available because I haven't import this shared one. Now re-execute. Okay, so it is working, and now you can see we are receiving all the information. We have some UI issues, so let's fix all of these UI issues. In our vstack, I'm gonna introduce alignment, and the alignment is leading. Now re-execute the application. Okay, as you can see, now it is looking good. Alright, so that's it for this video. I hope you like this video. It's a very cool video because it contains a GraphQL functionality, and this GraphQL functionality is a very common in the marketplace. So yeah, if you like this video, subscribe my channel and also write your comments, your opinions too. We will meet in our next video where we will discuss something new about Kotlin Multiplatform. Till that, goodbye.